Clinton? Hey everybody, how's it going? There's this concept with interpersonal relationships, this idea of hypergamy and monkey branching. The idea that you're always looking for someone of higher status in some way than you are in a relationship, and monkey branching with is if you find that person that is probably a higher status than you, probably more than what you would deserve, that you will leave the person you're with and go over and be with them if they're available. Rather than breaking up with the person you're with because you don't think that it's going to work out long term, or maybe it will work out long term, but it's not what you were really aiming for, you will stay with the person you're with, and then once someone better comes along, you'll just monkey branch on over to them and dump the person that was loyal to you that entire time. This is something that you may think is as old as interpersonal relationships, as old as time itself. But in fact, it's not. It actually has its roots in New York City commercial real estate. Most things when it comes to interpersonal relationships, psychology, philosophy, have their roots in New York City commercial real estate. The world lives and dies on the corrupt New York City real estate market. And I'd like to explain it to you. I'd like to explain how this works. So an interesting thing that I've noticed in New York City, a few things when it comes to vacant spaces. The first is that there is a large incentive structure to actually keep it vacant and keep asking a higher rent, because if you purchase the building with leverage, if you lower the rent, it lowers the value of the building, which then causes the bank to say, okay, we need you to now pay us the decrease in the value of the building because you use the building as collateral for this loan. And that incentivizes the space to stay empty. The next thing that I learned in this process is that there are a lot of places where they are telling the tenants, we will lower your rent, but you have to sign an NDA so that nobody else knows your low rent, because we don't want to screw up the rent on all of our other properties. But we'll lower your rent because we know nobody's going to pay this BS. The third thing that I've learned very recently is that the concepts of hypergamy and monkey branching really do exist in New York City commercial real estate, and it's actually how a lot of the market is right now the more I talk to people involved. And I'd love to hear Alan's opinion at Metro Manhattan Office Space, since he was an excellent broker 2 years ago when I was looking for a store and much more knowledgeable than me. So let's get into the topic here. So a few years ago, I was looking for a new store, and one of the places I checked out was this one on Lexington and East 28th Street. They were asking $14,500, which was kind of insane for what it was, but sadly, it was one of the closest things to reasonable that I had found after several months, because the New York City real estate market is that insane. This was a little emporium, and they have these different Indian kind of themed items for sale. They have this kind of thing in the window. And we went to check this place out, $14,500. It was for rent, and they said the moment I rented it, this tenant would be leaving. There was another place that I checked out last year. I wasn't looking at this for a store. I was honestly just looking at it for the lulz. This place is smaller than my current shop. Smaller, and it's $25,000 a month. This is a gift shop. This is a gift shop that sells t-shirts, luggage, perfume, postcards, and that was $75,000 a month. Not a year, not to buy, a month to rent. And the idea with these places is that there was a place that was doing business out of it, but they were just on their way out, and the moment that I start paying rent, they'd leave. Now, typically, when it comes to tenants and paying and renting out a space, if a space is for rent, usually one of two things are true. A, it's vacant already, which means that I can immediately rent it and immediately move in. Or B, it will be vacant shortly. There is a tenant occupying the space, but within a few weeks or maybe a month, they will no longer be occupying the space. So if you have a tenant that says, I will be here from December of 2010 to December of 2020 on their 10-year lease, and November of 2020 comes up, you may start showing the space to people, even though the tenant is still occupying it, because you just want someone to have a nice smooth transition into the space. You don't want to have months and months looking for a tenant where there's nobody there. If you're able to find an interested renter in that time period, then you go and do it. But there's a really weird C to this, which is C, you have a tenant that is not paying you the asking rent, but you know that you're never going to get the asking rent because the asking rent is insane. So you keep an ad up which says, listen, this space is $75K, and if you get $75K, by all means, you will kick the current tenant out on their ass, but you're more than happy to take the current tenant's money, which is what they can afford to pay during that time period. And, well, I'll let you decide for yourself if you think that the asking prices for these three spaces were fair based on whether or not the initial tenants are still there. So this one is 23 months later. This was an Emporium on 28th Street in Lexington. This was Portobello, a suit store on around 37th Street and 7th Avenue for $25,000 a month. This was around Broadway and 32nd Street. This was a gift shop for $75,000 a month, and this was last year. Do you think that these will have rented, or do you think that they will have continued to decide to just settle for what they can get from the existing tenants until they find someone else? Tune in. All right, so this is on 28th Street and Lexington. This is the Butala Emporium. You may remember this place from about 2 years ago. This one was around $13,000 to $14,000, and they wanted about a 3-month or 4-month deposit. I negotiated back and forth for about an hour, but really I couldn't get them to budge. It was going to be like $13,500, $14K, and they said that this place was going to be leaving and I would be able to take it immediately. As you can see, there's still a for rent sign on the window, but it's still open, and there's still a gentleman that's walking up and down the store for customer service for anybody who walks in, which leads me to believe that they are just not paying the full rent, but the moment they are able to find someone who can pay the full rent, they will kick this tenant out. But it doesn't look like they've been able to find someone who's been able to do that, because over the past 2 years, this place is still for rent, and Butala Emporium is still there, which kind of sends the message that on this block, you're not getting 13 or 14K for that store. All right, everybody, so this is the clothing store here that was listed for about $25,000 per month. Not per year, not to buy, per month last year. Now, I got here a little late. Looks like they closed early today. They usually close at 7. I've been going down the block, and I've seen that they are still open. And as you can see when you look inside of here, that it looks like they are fully stocked. This doesn't look like a place that only has 2 or 4 things left because they're closing. And I was told that if I wanted the place, that the moment I rent it, that the existing tenant will leave. They're only here for a short period of time, blah, blah, blah. And they're still here a year later. They're still staffed a year later, stocked a year later, and there's still people that are able to shop here if you get here early enough a year later, which really does show you that even a year later, after you have the COVID recovery, and this is kind of, it's not a full economic recovery, but you see that there's a lot of people on the street. You see that you got a lot of foot traffic here. There's everything's open. You have a lot of people walking by over here. That's Erica over there. Say hi, Erica. And this is, pretty busy. You got a lot of traffic. You don't have as many people walking by over here as I would imagine, but over there you got a lot of people walking by. So they haven't been able to find someone to take this for $25K in 1 year, and the existing store is still there, likely still paying them whatever it is they're able to or willing to pay for this space, because they're not able to find someone at their asking price, which is no surprise. This is smaller than the store that I have now, and this is going for $25K, which is kind of insane. But you let me know what you think. All right, I'll see you later. Wave goodbye, Erica. Hey everybody, how's it going? So this is the I Love New York gift store. I looked at this last year and I went through it with one of the brokers, and this space is $75,000 a month. So I'm just going to walk in. I wasn't able to walk in at that point since they were not open because they stay closed that day. So I'm just going to walk through the store and you can take a look at what cost $75,000, because I wasn't able to walk you through originally. So, oh yeah. So what you just saw was $75,000. I went through that with the broker, and the funny thing that I put in the beginning of that video was that they said, the super was outside and he said, yeah, this is totally dead. Nobody comes in here. And he said that right in front of the broker, just not caring at all about messing up his game, because the broker was talking up the area and explaining why it's worth it. But as you could see, they said that they were going to rent it out to somebody else because that place was going to be leaving the moment somebody takes it. And it really does seem like, again, over 1 year later, nobody has taken it at the asking price. And you can see that when it comes to COVID and all that, you have a lot of people outside walking around here. This is right by Herald Square. And it's pretty bustling. Again, like if I stop for a second in the sidewalk, I'm blocking somebody's path. There's people outside everywhere.
people are not staying inside their houses all day, and it's not empty like it was last time. And they still haven't gotten anybody to take this place because maybe, just maybe, it might not be worth $75,000. When I walk through the store, you may notice that it's approximately the same size as my own. And I imagine what this one is doing, just like the other business that I showed you, is they're probably here until they can find someone to pay the full price. And once they find someone to pay the full price, this business will be out of here. Erica, wave hi to the people. All right, on to the next one.
As you can see, each of those 3 spaces was occupied by the exact same business that was there 1 or 2 years ago. Most likely what happened was something like this. The existing tenant said, due to the amount of business that we're getting right now in the city, due to economic conditions, there is no way in hell I can pay $75K for this. And the landlord may have done something like, well, that's what I believe it's worth, so I'm going to put it up for rent for that amount. Screw you and your sustainable stream of income that you're able to provide us. And a year or 2 years later, they realized that nobody's willing to pay that much. Nobody's willing to pay that much. Nobody. Because it's insane. The reason I bring this up is because I think it's important for tenants to understand that they do have some power here. That when your landlord says, okay, fine, we'll just put it for rent at this price and find somebody else, that they're bluffing. That that's impossible. That these 3 places tried to find another tenant, and 2 years later, the same tenant is there because nobody is willing to pay more. And in all the other spaces in the city, what they did is they said, okay, fine, you don't want to pay more, we'll kick you out. And then the tenant got kicked out, and that's why in all of these real estate videos I do, all of these places are empty because nobody else wants to take it. And now I think they're starting to figure out, wait, crap, you know what? Nobody else is going to take this space. Okay, so I'll put it up for rent at that price just so I can feel better, but I'll keep this tenant for the meantime. But the fact that we're kind of transitioning over from the, I'll just kick the tenant who is paying $3,000 out so that I could list it for $20,000 and get 20, which never happens. We're transitioning from, I'll just kick the $3K so that I could try to get 20 into a model of, you know what, I'll put it up for rent for $20K, but I'll keep the $3K tenant until I find it, shows that the landlords are starting to get a little bit more desperate. This is a buyer's market at this point, and it's important that people who run businesses in the city understand that it's a buyer's market so that they don't get screwed. And what I find particularly interesting is that you can tell that it really hasn't lowered, because this place over here that had its for rent sign still had a for rent sign up 2 years later. And if they had asked something reasonable, it would have been rented to somebody else. But likely they're still not asking something reasonable. They're probably still asking $14,500 for that store, and you're welcome to view the walkthrough video of it with me. That's not $14,500 worth of store. And it's interesting that after, 6 months after that, there was still no concession. A year of a global pandemic, nothing. Just genuine, no compromise. Not even remotely coming back to sanity. It's like that person that thinks, I have a part-time job, I barely graduated high school, I have no skills, I have no charisma, I have no personality, I'm not in shape, I'm mean, but I deserve to be dating someone in the NBA. I deserve to be dating the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I deserve to be dating a model or an Olympic athlete. And it's just kind of ridiculous. It really is. I mean, at some point, they're going to have to settle for what they actually get. I think this is insane that you have a for rent sign on the window for 2 years because you're unwilling to just accept something reasonable for your space. And you'd think that after 2 fucking years that you would get the idea that maybe your building, maybe that little store is not worth $14,500. And what I find insane is that even a global pandemic that just destroyed a lot of the economy in the city still hasn't gotten it through the heads of the individuals involved in this business that it's time for a change. And that part of that change starts with these bubble bullshit prices coming down. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you all in the next video. Mr. Clinton says, bye now. Clinton? Clinton, give me a meow. What was that? That's not a meow. Clinton. Clinton. Clinton?
Is there a
you want to go, by
fundamental
the way,
right
you want to go to
to
work? Go take a job as an essential worker. Do it tomorrow. Right? You're working.
I am.
You're an essential worker. So go take a job as an essential worker.
But the people aren't hiring because of the
No, there are
pandemic.
people hiring. You can get a job as an essential worker. So now you can go to work and you can be an essential worker and you're not going to kill anyone.